Hello. Today we are going to be looking at searching for and citing academic articles in essays. Our first learning objective is identifying the basics for searching for academic literature. And then we're going to identify a couple of databases that you could use to search for health related journal articles, and then we're going to kind of illustrate to you guys how you can search for academic journals. And then fourthly, we are going to kind of look at a couple of strategies that you could use in drafting an academic essay that meets the expectation of what an academic writing should be. So starting with the first objectives. Why you can't wing it. It's very important to bear in mind that academic writing is possibly not a bit different from any other type of writing that you have done. You may have done, those, essay writing in high school, but when you're in college, you're kind of being expected to write at a much higher level. So it's like the essays you've written in, like the essays you wrote in high school, but like a graduation of that. Now you have to put in a whole lot more work into making it become meet the expectation of academic writing. So it is not like having a social media discourse. It's not like writing a blog. It's not like, writing a note and stuff like that. There's a certain structure when it comes to academic writing that is expected of everybody who is writing. So, one of the things is that you need to make sure that everything that you say is backed up by science, right? So, this is not, we don't do, trust me, I know, type of discussions in academic writing. If you're going to say something, then you need to know, let us know where where did you know it from? It's not enough to, make sentences without citing the sources where those sentences came from. You have to tell us where you got that information from. This is because it is by determining the source of your information that we can decide, whether or not what you have to say is something that we need to listen to or be something that is credible. So it's not enough to say very brilliant things. You have to show us where those brilliant things come out from, where you got that information from, what sources. So that's a very key component of academic writing. Citations, very key component of it. So, and this is because if we think the source of your information is questionable, then the entire thing that you've said automatically becomes questionable. So it's very, very important to cite your sources so that one can go and verify whether your sources know what they were talking about in making the assessment, whether you know what you're talking about as a result. So, where can you find sources of information? Before we get into that, it's important to note that science has existed for centuries, and much of what we are doing these days is kind of keeping up with the knowledge that we have. So it is very, very unlikely that anything you're going to be talking about in your essay is something that is brand new to the world. Even when COVID came and COVID was, really new to the world, it wasn't entirely new to researchers who were, researching infectious diseases because there had been enough information showing that this can happen and this might happen this way. Of course, it happened in the, some predictions were made and it didn't quite, go along that way. But that's how science works. So you're more or less like building off old knowledge and adding on to it. So you are not likely at your level going to be an expert in any knowledge. And we're not in the era of mad scientists, untrained mad scientists who just, know things. And, in the era that we are in, you're building off old knowledge, and we want to see that. And when we read academic papers, it kind of shows us a trail of knowledge from what we once knew, maybe like in 1970s, and what we know now, like in 2022, sort of that paper trail helps us in seeing the evolution of knowledge from what was previously known to what is known. So one of the things you guys might notice, or maybe not, is that when people are quoting research, when all the research they are quoting are old research, let's say 1990s or 1980s, a scientist is going to feel like you, if you don't have more updated research, we're kind of not too sure that's how relevant your knowledge is, because you is kind of showing that there hasn't been updated knowledge or updated information on that topic, which could signify that the person who is saying that is purposely refusing to share those updated information is, or I don't know, most likely going to be that the person is choosing not to share those updated information. Because, like I told you, nothing is new. Everything has been researched before, maybe in a slightly different way, but nothing is new. So, we want to see the evolution or the trail of knowledge in academic writing. So, that brings the question is, must you then use academic journals in order to write academically? So, the answer is preferably. The reason is because the articles that are in academic journals are what we call evidence based. It usually is based off on very sound science. It's not something that one just woke up in the morning and just wrote a bunch of notes and stuff like that, because academic journals go through a process by which there's rigor that goes through what is called peer reviewed process to make sure that not just any type of paper or knowledge get published, and making sure that the science is good. It's more or less like helping in, you know, sifting out bad science. So that's why articles from academic journals are generally trusted in terms of the science behind it. So the reason is because the rigor controls for bad science or unscrupulous practices that some scientists may have if it wasn't there. So rigor is kind of standardized. Some things have been systematically determined that this is an acceptable way of doing science, and others are not acceptable way of doing science. So it's not a perfect system, but it's what we have, and it has worked pretty well. So far, maybe with time, with evolution of knowledge, we may have something different, but for now, academic journals give us the best evidence based or most rigorous science when it comes to health, especially health. So, but must it be academic journals? Once again, this is one of those yes, but also kind of no. The reason being that if you're getting information from government agencies, it is considered as being evidence based in a way as academic journals. The reason is because government agencies kind of are putting their mouths, putting their mouth where the money is. There's a level of expertise that is required from agencies, that they have to they're kind of putting their reputation at stake, so they have to be they kind of has to be information that is not that is based on science. So it's under the premise that the information that is being shared by government agencies are based on science, and there is experts knowledge. You wouldn't want, let's just for example, the Secretary General of the United Nations to stake his reputation by passing on misinformation or disinformation. So that is why information from government agencies are acceptable. If you cite CDC, it's going to be acceptable, this as the same as citing an academic article. So professional associations also are considered acceptable. And if you cite something from Americans Heart Association, I think that's what it's called, it is seen as being reputable, is a reputable professional association. So information that comes from that is generally seen as being acceptable. But of course, you also want to be very careful what association there is, just to make sure that it is not an association with some shady foundation or something like that. But that's one of those ways where we want to see where you sourced your information from, to determine whether what you have to say is credible or not. So, where do you find academic papers? So you find academic papers in journal databases. So there's a preference for the course, and generally, or held, the for the in our program, that you are finding your information from academic journals. The reason why is because when you go to academic journals, you kind of have the advantage of having a broader and wider range of information than you would have the issues. For example, you go to Google search. So you have a much broader range of information by going to Google Scholar, which is an academic journal, versus going to Google search, just the regular Google. So because you are going to get, with Google Scholar, for an example, the information you're going to get in Google Scholar has been curated, and a lot of them are, articles that are coming from various academic journals, that's been curated in such a way that it's easy to find, in a way that it wouldn't be if you are going to go to each individual journals to go and look for that information. And like I said, information is much easier to find. It's also very easy to search and to cite your sources by using those databases. So have a couple of databases. You have PubMed, which is very common to use with health subjects. You have Ovid. uh, Google Scholar kind of hosts everybody and everything, but it's a pretty good, very intuitive way, data journal databases to use when you are looking for journal articles, particularly at the level that you are. You're not going into very in-depth literature search. So, but the university does have the Sims library that provide a journal database as well. So you could use that as well. With the Sims library, you could also use the Ask a Librarian function at the Sims library, or you can schedule a consultation with the librarian, just kind of to help you search, the Sims library to get the information that you need. So, searching for academic journals. So, I have included two mini lectures inside this that kind of walks you through how to use Google Scholar. This is the first video that looks at how using Google Scholar for your literature search, and this second video looks at using PubMed for your literature search as well. So you you will be required in your assessment to use both of them. So do kind of take your time to watch both videos, and so that you can get the sense of what those mean, the difference between using Google Scholar versus using PubMed, and just kind of try your hands at it and figure out which you prefer between the two. So now we get into how to write academically. So first things first, right? Before you decide to begin your essay, you have to make some decisions, one of which is determining what your research question is. The reason you need to have a research question is because it gives you direction about what to do when you are searching for your articles. There are millions and millions of journal articles that are available out there. You can't go through all that many of them. It's just too much to go through. So what your research question does for you is that it helps you in streamlining your search, so that you kind of get there a lot faster than if you didn't have a direction. You kind of want to get there really a lot faster versus just kind of throwing a ball in the air and hoping that one sticks. So it's very important to start with a research question, and then when you start with the research question, you have to ask yourself, so what is the main point of my research question? What is it about your research question you want to know the most about? I want to give an example of an ex- this is real life that happened with my mother. So my mother is 68 or thereabouts. She's so, and she's doing her master's in public health. So, and she's going through her dissertation, and she had sent me a message and said that she was asked to write a research question. And the research question that she had was, I'm going to give you what she wrote. What she wrote, her initial research question was, what are the risk factors for females between 18 to 35 years old in developing anorexia? So, and that's her professor told her that that research question is too broad, and she was wondering how can she narrow it down. And one of the things that I told her to think about narrowing down her research question was ask herself, okay, what are the risk factors for females? She has an age 18 to 34, 35, but the thing is that for young people, anorexia is an eating disorder, and young women are generally more affected by it by older women. So her age of 18 to 35 is a bit too out of range. So I told her you have to start looking a little bit younger. If you go 15 to 24, you are more likely going to find information there than going as wide as 18 to 35. And then the other thing that I mentioned to her was females where you have to think about a location, or you have to think about gender. Sometimes you may want to think about socioeconomic status, because the more you can refine your research question and pinpoint the main point you want that research question to address, the better it will be for you to find the kind of information that you need. You don't want to have a research question that is too broad. You also don't want to have a research question that is too narrow, because if it's too broad, you're going to spend all day looking for information. And if it's too narrow, you're going to not get sufficient information to help you in writing your paper. Right. So once you have figured out what your main point is, now you have to kind of skim through your database. You have to kind of skim through it. Also, I just wanted to tell you guys how I helped her streamline her question. I told her an example would be, what is the prevalence of anorexia among adolescent girls aged 15 to 24 in the United Kingdom? So now she knows she's looking for information that has to do with adolescent girls. She knows she's looking for that has to do with those girls who live in United Kingdom. I said United Kingdom because my mom lives in the UK, but that kind of gives you an idea of how you can streamline your research questions so that you kind of get to the main points that you want a lot quicker than if you didn't have a more streamlined research question. So once you've had the main point of your research, now you have to kind of skim through your database, because you're going to get a whole lot of hits with that. Like when you put in the search in your database, you're going to get a whole lot of hits. But now you have to skim through all of that search results that you have, and kind of skim through it and decide what is relevant and what isn't. So, and then when you're skimming through it, you need to kind of select a few appropriate papers. Don't go too much because you're going to get overwhelmed if you take too many papers. I generally want kind of people start between 5 to 10 papers to kind of give you a good sense of what is out there. So once you've selected those 5 questions, the five papers you're going to be selecting are those that are closest to your research question. For example, in my mother's example that I said, the kind of papers that I would be looking for if I were her is looking for any paper that is looking at anorexia among adolescent women in United Kingdom. After I found enough of those, if I don't find enough, then I may move out a little bit and start looking in terms of Europe or something like that, because there may be information in there. But whatever papers that I'm going to be looking for has to be kind of centered around this. So that is how your when you're skimming through the paper, that's how you should think about it. Then after you've found your papers, you've skimmed through your papers, then you need to outline your essay with the information that you got from the papers. So that helps you in outlining your paper, so that you know what is written in the essay, sorry, what is written in those papers, and how to best write your essay in such a way that your essay aligns with science, or your essay is evidence based. So a well structured paper must have the following: it must have an introduction, it must have a body, it must have a conclusion. So, what the introduction does is more like a general overview. It's kind of giving you an idea of what is this happened. Like, let's just, for example, the sky is blue. That just tells us the sky is blue. We don't know a whole lot more about what's happening in the sky beyond that the sky is blue. Now, the body is the meat of the essay. If I have my introduction as the sky is blue, the body would be, and there are, airplanes flying across, the sky, because there's an airport, very close by, or there could be birds that are migrating and they are all, flying over the sky and something like that. That becomes the meat of my essay. But remember, in the general overview, I just gave you like kind of a sprinkling of the information that is going to come. The main information about the sky is going to be in the body of the essay. So that's how you need to think about it in differentiating what should go into the introduction and what should go into the essay. What your conclusion is a summary of what was in the body of your essay, or a deduction. So now you've talked about how, what's it called? The planes are flying because there's an airport close by, and the birds are migrating. Then you can say, oh, right around this time in the day, based off on what we are seeing with the sky, with the planes and the migration, it's very likely that, I don't know, there's going to be less flights of birds in the air or something like that. But basically, your conclusion is kind of trying to draw a summary of what you have, said before, so that it kind of gives you an idea of what. In your conclusion, don't give new information. Don't use your conclusion to introduce a new subject or a new topic. Everything you're saying in your conclusion is something you have already said before. You're just kind of saying it in shorter sentences, or in fewer words than it. Your conclusion is not where you talk about more things. Your conclusion is things you've already talked about in the body of your essay. You're just kind of summarizing it now. So, the body of the essay is the most important part of your essay, and this is where the majority of your grades will come from. Yeah, in the assessment, you're going to see the rubrics, and you would notice that the introduction probably has like 5 points. The body of the essay will probably have 15 points. So you don't want to spend more of your time on the introduction and neglect the body of the essay. The body of the essay is the main thing. That's where you should spend the most time, and it should have the most focus, for you when it comes to your with your essay. Always use subheadings and paragraphs. What those do is that it helps improve the clarity of your point. When you have run-on paragraphs, this is just a torture to read. If you have an essay that is one paragraph from introduction to the conclusion, it's going to be very, very difficult to read because you are not helping your audience follow your train of thought. And when it's difficult for your audience to follow your train of thought, as a grader, you're going to lose points. If it's going to be very, if clarity is something that I'm not going to get from your work, you are basically having a poor quality essay. So it's very, very important that you not just that you what you write in the essay is good, but you write it in such a way that is easy to read and is easy to understand. So when you're drafting your conclusion, some of the things to pay mind to is to make sure that your conclusion is in a briefly summary of the introduction or the body of the essay. If you may not add the a summary of the introduction, but you must add the summary of the body. So your conclusion, maybe two to three paragraphs. No, it may be more depending on how long your essay is, but generally two to three works well. And then your conclusion must not include any information you have not already covered in the body of your essay. Like I said, no new information. Don't do new information at the conclusion. That's not where that's not where you do that. Another important thing not to do in the conclusion is not to include citations. There should be no citations in the conclusion. The reason is because everything you're going to say in the conclusion, you've already said it before, so those citations have already been appropriately done, so there's no need to repeat them again. So, like I said, your conclusions must not include citations. So, this is the video that I've kind of added on strategies for writing an academic essay. It's more or less like a cheat sheet for you. I kind of walked you through how I redraft sentences and how I'm go from taking information from a journal article and paraphrasing it in such a way that it becomes mine, and writing it in such a way that it comes out making sense more or less. So this is I think about 10 minutes video. I'm not sure. Do watch it and very much follow through the instructions and the resources that's provided there to help you in writing your essay. So if you have any questions, please use the Q&A board and I will respond to your questions. Do have a lovely day. Bye.